What I've got in the next few slides that you'll be able to take your time to look at later are the key steps in focusing. First, if we're working with a client or ourselves, we make sure we ground and center ourselves as we get in touch with the issue. So before you invite a client to do a lot of inner body work, you really want to be sure they can break anything that feels overwhelming, put on the handbrake, so to speak, touch and go, whatever safety work you normally do. Often when we start with an issue, we might invite a client to put their hand where they feel it most. And then they can always put their hands on their thighs to ground themselves or open their eyes. And on the next slide, and we won't go through this because we don't have time tonight, but you can try this at home later. You say hello. Now you're trying to relate to yourself in a really warm, caring, friendly way. So you're really curious. So how am I inside right now? And then you start to describe it. And you ask, does this fit? And you might add more adjectives or descriptions. You might add images or sensations or movements or metaphors. You might invite, what's the worst of this, or what's the best of this, what needs some work right now, and so on, to get a sense of an issue. Then, so once you've got that, on the next slide, you let a felt sense form, which means you kind of need to sit down and wait. And it can take a minute or two, which can feel like a long time. What does this whole thing feel like? What's the whole of it? And wait. And then you get the handle of it, which means what's the best description? And you resonate that back and forth on the inside. Oh, it's a tight feeling. Is that it? Oh, it's not just tight, it's a stretched out tight. And you keep going until your body goes, yes, that's it. Oh, goodness, you've described it. There's a kind of a release that happens when you resonate it and the body gets a good description. It releases and relaxes. And if you go on to the next page, then you can ask, once you've got that, what's the crux of this, or what's the main thing? And wait. This is the key, not to let your mind get in the way, but to wait on the inside of the body. And then you might ask again, what makes it like this? What's the worst? What makes it so? What does it need? What's a good direction for this to move into? What direction does it want to move into? So we're asking and receiving. So these are the key steps in focusing, and we can take our clients through these. However, that said, if we move on to the next slide, oh, I've jumped ahead of myself. When we come to the end of a focusing session, at the next slide, Stephen, we do sense for a stopping place. We don't just cut the feel sense off. We invite it to find a good place to stop, and we receive and experience what's changed. We welcome the shift and hold it for a few minutes, or even 15 seconds. Rick Hansen has identified that 15 seconds is enough for the neuronal synapses to mark the change. So really encouraging people to hold that, and then thanking the body and letting it know we can come back. Now this can be quite a lot for a client, and it can be a lot to learn to value their being with experience. So as a therapist, we can introduce this in snippets. And if you go to the next slide, I've got 6 ways you can orient the client in small doses to snippets of focusing. We can do it when we're empathizing, sharing experience, inviting some more, acknowledging inner parts, making solution-focused invitation, and acknowledging what's in the here and now. So if you go to the next page,